G'day folks, welcome to the end situation in this game of Donnerschlag by VUCA Simulations. This is a very interesting game. It is, I describe it as kind of fairly lightweight, but with some really interesting decision points. So I'm thinking it's great for new gamers because it's relatively easy to learn. It's easy to play basically on your turn. You play an activation card and activate the units on that card, and there are sort of different formations that you can activate. This is really simple to do. You basically activate the formation, but then you've got some really interesting decisions to make in terms of what formation you activate, what you do with those formations. So in this particular game, I tried to link up the 23rd Panzer, the 6th Panzer, and then the 17th Panzer when they arrive, and focus on this sort of this western drive, following the path of the Don River out on the left flank. So you can see all the action is kind of out here, and the Romanians on the right really struggled early and never made much progress. Because of that, I decided to call Donnerschlag on objective area A. So my objective then became to capture part of this area, and I came 2 hexes short. Here's some advanced elements of the 17th Panzer driving hard through here. They just didn't make it. It becomes pretty obvious sort of where you're driving. My strategy, incidentally, was to focus down the middle here and then be able to split left or right depending on success. Success was happening out in the left flank, and I had to call Donnerschlag. So I decided that it looked like this would be the best path for success. So I picked A and just fell short. Yeah, look, a lot of interesting decisions to make. That call of Donnerschlag, that call of what objective area you're driving for, A, B, or C, is very interesting. And I mean, I'm playing this single-handed, solo, but it'd be very interesting against an opponent because, I mean, as the Russians, it was pretty obvious that A was the objective, driving hard down here. But against an opponent who didn't know that, I might have otherwise driven more towards the centre here, and then maybe tried to branch off towards A or even C, or it would have been different. Look, everything about this is easy to grasp, but there are a lot of little tactical puzzles as you're playing through. The rivers are critical. There's, of course, the Axe River down in the south off camera. This is it flowing through here. And then you've got the Mishkova River running through here. And they are formidable barriers for the Germans. And the Russians, look, tanks can't cross them. There are combat penalties, even if one unit is attacking across this river. And then there's kind of like what happened around here. The river kind of flows around here. It becomes this kind of like getting across these bridgeheads is really difficult with enemy zones control. So the Russians will force back a little bit, and then they're locking these zones of control. So as soon as the Russians cross the river, as soon as the Germans cross the river, they have to stop. So it's very interesting. Ideally, you want this sort of break through, and don't let the Russians sort of make this happen, basically. But again, it's all implemented with very straightforward rules. What else? Okay, so yeah, the Germans are really on the drive. They have an initiative. They're driving hard. The Russians, their activation cards are typically kind of quirky, and it reflects. So what happens is you activate the yellow units of one army. So you pick either the 51st or the 20. I can't recall, and 21st maybe. 25th, and you activate all the yellow banded units. So if I were to activate this force down here, I'd activate these guys, these guys. So it's really chaotic and random. And I've been kind of thinking, early in the game, you're thinking, well, why is this happening? Why am I activating yellow bands? And I kind of thought, well, this kind of reflects the kind of chaotic nature of that Russian retreat. They're kind of disorganized, units falling back here and there. And by midway through the game, I was thinking, yeah, this is a really great mechanism. The Germans have their panzer divisions driving together. The Russians are sporadically falling back and trying to form a line. And it just works really well. Later, the Russians do get some formation activations, and they can activate entire formations or their headquarters for their armies. But yeah, a lot of the time they're just activating these coloured bands of units and kind of trying to plug the gap. You don't get entire formation activations. Indeed, looking at the Russians, you can see there's so many different types of formations. The 13th Guards, 38th, 1st Guards, 2nd Guards mechanised, 6th mechanised. They're relatively small formations compared to the Axis formations. The 6th Romanian here, 23rd Panzer in here, 6th Panzer, which are much larger. So it's very asynchronous. Different sort of gameplay on both sides. The Russians are often just plugging gaps, trying to hold the line, trying to pick those key defensive areas. And there's a lot of little towns. So these provide, I think it's a -1 dice roll modifier. The cities are more formidable. They halve the attackers. So every little defensive strength helps the Russians. The combat cards are fascinating as well. So you also get a hand of combat cards, and they're very diverse. They can do so many different things. In this case, roll 2 dice, choose a result. I'll read them out because it's a bit blurry. Column shifts, dice roll modifiers, things that affect the movement rate of your activated units, things that just impose step losses on the enemy. Very diverse, very fascinating. Every time I'm getting... So at the start of each turn, you get these hands of cards, and you're kind of looking over thinking, okay, what can I do this turn? You're looking at the combat activations as well, and you're kind of planning your activations and your combat card usage together. Sometimes your combat cards can be very powerful. They can negate river effects. They give you double movement for the Romanians. The whole design of this game is fascinating. Down to the placement of the A, B, C objectives. So you've got the 6th Panzer and the 23rd Panzer, which start kind of centre left. So the A objective is further back. The Romanians start on the right, so the C objective is further forward. So if you can break through with the Romanians, and early in the game I'm thinking they're never going to break through. They're so slow. A lot of these Romanians only have 3 movement speed compared to the Germans units who have 4 and 5. And so I'm thinking, well, they're never going to make the C objective. But then they get these combat cards, which give the Romanians double movement, and quite a few of those come out. I played at least 2, so I know there's at least 2 in the deck. And then suddenly the Romanians are up level with sort of the German advance, and if the Russians have sort of pulled away from here to stem, as happened here, it kind of gives the Romanians an opportunity to push on that right flank, which happened, but because I just kind of been neglecting them so much, it was kind of too little, too late. A learning point for the future. So yeah, look, in summary, very smooth, fast gameplay. The turns move very quickly. You play a card, you activate your units, you conduct combat. It all works very quickly. The player aids are superb. They summarise all the terrain effects. So you can see here, towns that's a town, sorry, not a city. -2 dice roll modifier. The cities halve attacking strength. Even the minor villages and train stations are -1 dice roll modifier. The bridges are critical. And the rivers. It's and there's a lot of variability. You've got events that increase your combat card limit, events that increase your activation card limit, events that give you extra active. Oh, look, it's just really the deck of cards really adds a lot of diversity to the game. You don't know what you're going to be dealt. I had some turns where I had sort of 3 remaining activations right when the sort of 17th Panzer were driving. I was frustrated. And then on the final turn, I got a lot of any formation activations. So the 17th Panzer could really drive towards that objective. But again, they just fell short. The combat results table is interesting. In the sense that a lot of DR results, and it was difficult to impose step losses. It's the kind of game where you need to surround enemy forces with zones of control, force them to retreat, and they're eliminated because of those enemy zones of control that they're retreating through. Aside from that, what I experienced was a lot of just DR results, and I hadn't surrounded them, and so the Russians were just able to retreat and survive, and all they're doing is sort of slowly pulling back. And this is basically what happened here. The Russians slowly pulling back. There are a lot of Russian step losses off the board. I can maybe see about 15 unit counters, but not enough to open any big gaps in the Russian lines. Even given if there was 1 or 2 more turns, I still don't think the 17th Panzer could have pushed through to that A objective. I think the Russian lines out here in the west are pretty solid, and you can see they've got kind of double, triple lines of defence. You've got the A objective held, easy to move these units around. Yeah, it's tough for the Germans if the Russians can kind of form this solid defensive line. So all up, this is a fascinating game. I recommend it for gamers of all types. For beginner gamers, easy to learn, fast to play. For experienced gamers, easy to learn, but with a lot of replayability and fascinating decisions and gameplay. The hidden cards, you don't know what's going to happen. A lot of tension between the two players. Not the best solo game for many of the reasons I've mentioned. The hand of cards, the secret objective is really critical. That's probably the biggest factor that kind of makes it hard to play solo. But highly recommended for 2 players. Folks, that's Donnerschlag, Escape from Stalingrad by VUCA Simulations. Check it out if it's of interest. Thanks for watching and take care.